Great, thank you for coming out tonight. My name is Sadie Urban. I'm the events coordinator here at the Reserve. Tonight, this talk is part of a year-long monthly lecture series called Driftless Dialogue. This is our 6th season, and this is the 2nd talk of this series. Tonight we are talking about flood recovery efforts in the villages of Lafarge and Gaze Mills. Also, I'd like to mention that this lecture series is funded in part by a grant from the Driftless, the Kickapoo Reforestation Fund, also known as the Newsom Grant, and also the Friends of the KBR help with the food and beverages. We've also partnered with Community Media of Viroqua and Vernon Communications to have our talks filmed, and they will be aired on the Vernon Communications Community Access channel. So if you know of anyone who couldn't make it tonight, let them know that it will be on television as well. Tonight we have Peter Fletcher will be talking about what the village of Lafarge has done since the floods of 2007 and 2008. And Julia Hennelly will talk about what Gaze Mills has done as well because of those floods. And I'll hand it over to Peter Fletcher. Thank you.
Hey, good evening, and thanks for the opportunity for me to speak to you tonight about a little bit about the village of Lafarge. I'll also give you an update, a little background too. With Gaze Mills, I was fortunate enough there to work with the village on their comprehensive plan a few years ago, which I'm sure Julie and the village has begun to implement through their project. So my experience in Gaze Mills through that process has certainly helped with the village of Lafarge process after the flooding. So that's helped out immensely. First of all, a little background on the Regional Planning Commission. Just what we are, the Mississippi River Regional Planning Commission, who I work for. We are a planning organization that's set up by state statutes, and we work in a 9-county area. The counties we serve are mainly along the Mississippi River. If you take Crawford County on the south, all the way up to Pierce County, the 7 counties going up the river, then also Monroe and Vernon County is where we provide planning services. We are partially funded from many different funding streams. The 9 counties within that region were funded through some state funding, also some federal funding, and other grant opportunities. Then we are authorized to work within that 9-county region with towns, cities, and villages to provide planning services on a contractual basis. And that is sort of what has brought us to and myself in working with the communities of Gaze Mills and also the village of Lafarge. So a little background on myself. I've been with the Planning Commission since around 2004. Prior to that, I was a county planner in Trimble County. I was there for around 7 years. Prior to that, I was city planner for the city of Glendale, the suburb of Milwaukee. And besides that, I grew up in Vernon County and Coon Valley. So my goal in life was to get back to this area. And it took me a few years, but I finally made it a few years ago. So I have appreciation and understanding of the communities, and I think that certainly, helped through the various planning processes. Now, after that, I'll get to Lafarge, and see if I got this right. Okay, here we go. Village of Lafarge Economic and Recreation Development Plan. Why the village decide to plan. As both the communities in the Kickapoo Valley went through historic flooding in August of 2007 and in June of 2008. As a result, in Lafarge, 16 homes were purchased because of flooding utilizing Federal Emergency Management FEMA funding, which left over around 20 acres of vacant land, which is now under ownership of the village. On top of that, there was also previous to that, the village has owned other open space property, combining, we're looking at probably over 60 acres of open space property. After the flooding, and around a couple years ago when I got involved, is because the acquisition process took a little bit of time, but then the village was left, and they said, okay, we've acquired these properties, we have existing open space that we have, existing properties that we feel are somewhat underutilized. We've just said, Organic Valley, a great business, is situated on the north of the village with, roughly now, probably over 400 employees. They have great recreation facilities, and I think the village was struggling with looking at the various things, all these different things they had, and what can we do with it? How can we better enhance those? And how can we bring them together and help make them an asset to the community? And at that point, they made a key decision, and instead of just going with the first idea that was brought up, I think they decided to take a step back and just take a look at, let's just relax a little bit. Let's go through a process that we can take a look at all our options, evaluate them, and see the best way to move forward with hopefully consensus of the community. And that is what they did. At that point, they decided to prepare a plan. And the plan, as far as preparing a plan, one of the key things was funding. How do you fund it? And they applied for NUSM grant funding to prepare the plan. That was awarded. That then brought funding for them to utilize, fortunately, for our organization, the Regional Planning Commission, to help them prepare a plan. They designated the Village of Lafarge Planning Commission as being responsible for overseeing the planning process. And during that planning process, data was collected, there was community and resident input, there's also a community survey that went out. And then the key to the plan was to identify projects that are needed and how to begin to accomplish those projects. When they went through and began defining what's going to be in the plan, three things really that they really wanted to focus on, and the plan focuses on two areas: recreation development and economic development. By the way, the planning process started around a year ago at this time, and we had just completed it a couple months ago. The plan was adopted by the village board. But again, it focuses on recreation development and economic development. And one of the overriding goals is that I heard during the process was, how do we connect the entire community? And we have recreational facilities, residential neighborhoods, business district, the school, organic valley. How do we connect those? And not just physically. It is important to connect them physically, but also socially. And how do we integrate them into the entire community? And that really through this process, becomes certainly one of the challenges. Okay, just a little quick summary of just a couple highlights of the community survey that went out at the beginning of the process. There are 418 surveys were mailed out, 147 surveys were returned. Essentially, they went to every resident or every tax parcel with ownership received a survey. 35% response rate. That's pretty sufficient. I mean, pretty average for what you get back in those types of surveys. As far as recreation activity that most people participated, the respondents said walking, jogging, and hiking. And that was then followed by hunting and nature and wildlife viewing, were the three categories that received the most responses. As far as the recreation facilities that should be encouraged in Lafarge, not unlike based on what they participate in, bike paths and trails were identified as in the survey as one of the key recreational things. That was followed by a campground, and also community gardens were popular. As far as what residents, when we asked the question, what residents most liked about Lafarge, small town atmosphere, people, neighbors, beautiful, scenic. I've been fortunate enough to do planning in a lot of communities in this area, and when you ask that question, in these small communities, I've never not had that response that this is the most popular. It's obvious people like this area and they're here for a reason. And I'm going to focus on, just give you a little background, on sort of like I said, the plan was prepared and some of the input, but the key thing is, what did ultimately decide to do? The plan itself contains a lot of recommendations and a lot of different things to accomplish as far as recreation development and also economic development. I'm going to start with recreation development and tell you some of the things that were identified, maybe some of the highlights. as we talked, consistent with what we heard in the survey and community feedback, was create a system of multi-use bicycle pedestrian trails throughout the village and neighboring areas, connecting the village recreational properties to businesses, residential neighborhoods, and regional recreation areas. I'm going to put up, apologize, that map is very similar to this one, and as far as all the trail connections in this one are green, and I'm just going to use this one to highlight a couple things. This is the village of Lafarge in an overview. This is the downtown of Lafarge, the main business district, the floodplain properties, and mainly south of downtown. Organic Valley sits here. The reserve is just to the north. The dark blue lines represent, what we tried to do is identify where, look at what has for existing sidewalks and existing streets that could be utilized as a walking or biking facilities. Those are highlighted in blue. Segments where there isn't currently a trail, which the plan calls for creating some sort of multi-use trail or connection, are on the green dashed lines. And if you begin to look at this, how these connect, we are looking at, through this trail system, is connecting floodplain properties with the new things that we're looking at going on there, the downtown area, Organic Valley, the school sits here, and also up to connect to the reserve. So with the idea that those ultimately those trails as we move ahead would be developed, signed, and be sort of those designated areas. The other thing that was identified in a very similar response to trails was connect the village trail system to the Kickapoo Valley Reserve and network of trails. Where this is, if you're driving in from Viroqua on 82, right before you hit Lafarge, the village, if you look off to your left, in the wintertime you'll see the snowmobile trail, but there is right in this area is an abandoned railroad bed. That is what we're looking at would be this section of the trail here that would ultimately connect to the reserve. That would be one of the immediate goals that we'll be working on, or projects we'll be working on, is creating that, or taking that former railroad bed and converting that into a multi-use trail for biking, walking, or various uses, ultimately to connect to the reserve, and that will provide sort of the western loop of the trail that would go around and throughout the village. Another item that was identified in the plan that was brought forward was to create a walkway handicap accessible fishing area on public property adjacent to Mill Street south of State Highway 131. If you're coming in from Viroqua again on 82, the first street, instead of going straight ahead at that first intersection, if you take a right, that's Mill Street. If you go down Mill Street a couple blocks, you'll back off the street, there's a pond there. And what the community and the planning process said, we'll take a look at that pond, look at finding opportunities to dredge the pond, to create it as a fishing spot, a fishing location. And then we're looking at then creating a trail around the pond with maybe some, whether it be some handicap accessible fishing, whether, a small pier, or I don't know if you're familiar with Coon Valley, they have the bump outs along the stream that to provide for handicap accessible fishing. That is something that we're looking at for that pond, existing pond that is there. And that pond is adjacent to the Kickapoo River. The Kickapoo River is right back behind here. Okay, there we go. Just south of that pond, a little further on Mill Street, the more property that was acquired, and where we're at on the map is the pond is right here, now we're talking right down here, was to create an educational forest on selected village-owned floodplain forest properties. As I mentioned, to south of the pond, that we could connect this to the existing trail around the pond, and also the educational forest. The idea being that we'd put in a walking trail through that forested area. With that, there would be signs marking the various plant and tree species. Identify what is the floodplain forest. What is the value of that in the ecosystem. The importance critical in certainly the Kickapoo River Valley are those floodplain forests for storage of floodwater that impact these communities, and sort of what they serve as a function. And this was an opportunity through the planning process in creating this to also maybe work with the schools to potentially maintain that or help maintain that and use that as an educational resource. Again, as I talked about, you know, that physical connection and also that social and integrated community. Also, as far as recreation development actions, they talk about designate specific floodplain properties as available for lease or possible business opportunities and or open space recreational uses. As I mentioned, there was a campground RV for tents and RV, community gardens, a farmer market. As I mentioned, some of these properties were acquired through FEMA funding. Other property the village just has and owned. So there's different, you know, certain ability to do different things on different properties. But this is a possible way of more to maybe seasonally utilize some of these properties rather than having them really just there as just a general open space. So this was, again, another consideration as far as recreation development activities. I said those are just a few of the highlights as far as the recreation development actions. Now I'm going to take you over to as far as economic development actions. One of the things that came out of the planning process was identify and pursue funding to develop a Main Street streetscape concept that would provide a vision for streetscaping improvements within the public right-of-way. This is when you're coming in on 82 from Viroqua, you get to that first intersection, you see where 131, you're looking down Main Street. That is your vision. That's what you see. What we're looking at doing is getting a sort of a, like I said, a streetscape concept of what that could look like in the future. And with the idea being is how could we, through whether it be pavement design, lighting, streetscaping, an entrance feature, make people when they're at this intersection take a look down there and say, wow, that's kind of neat. Let's go down there and take a look at it. I think all of you have driven through communities. You can drive through a lot of communities throughout the state, and all of a sudden you'll get to a certain one, and all of a sudden, this is interesting. Something makes you want to stop. I just went to Oshkosh this last week, and I took a different route. And so I usually go 21, but I went to 23 across. I went through Montello, and of all the communities I went through, we were just driving along, and I saw Montello, a small community, and it was just there's something about it. It was just the way it was. It made you want to stop. And with Lafarge, and I equate this to growing up in this area, every time I came, I always came from Viroqua, and to tell the truth, most of the time was either going up to a Rockton or the reserve canoeing. I got to the intersection, I take a left. There was nothing there that made me want to go further. And I didn't know that the downtown Main Street was there. So we are looking at ways to, again, to something to draw people in, to make them curiosity. When you get to that point, whether it comes from the other direction, from Hillsborough, or this direction, to make that curiosity, make you go there, make you stop and take a look around and see what's within the community. Organic Valley sits in your Main Street here. Organic Valley at 4 or 5 blocks to the north. Employees just did an expansion, probably the end of this year, somewhere between 400 or 500 employees. What they want to do through that planning process was identified as further strengthen the connection of Organic Valley's employees to the Village of Lafarge, so employees are aware of village business services and recreation activities. Again, we've worked on that physical connection, the trail connection. And now also in economic development, we're looking at how can more integrate them into the community. The great thing is with Organic Valley, their mission is to enhance the communities they're in. And also if you go up to the facility, there's always people out walking and moving around. And the idea being is we can have these designated trails, we can capture some of the employees, get them down to the business district and see what's there. Another project I had just have been interaction with Organic Valley, and actually I met with one of the employees there, and I talked about this plan and also the other project I was working on, and the person had been there a couple months. I just was curious because I said, well, what do you think of Lafarge, with the downtown? And that's when I started, well, I really haven't been down there. It was very enlightening that you have roughly 300 to 400 people driving there a day to that location, and how can we connect them? And that's important for Lafarge. Communities, any community, would do anything to have that large employer sitting there. And we can think about all the economic development activities we can do with recreation development to draw tourism, but when you think of it, every day you have 300 to 400 people coming to this community. Every day they're coming here. How can you, if you can capture 10 or 20% of them, bring them to your downtown area, things will happen and businesses will thrive and take off. And so one of the key things with this, and some of the recommendations within the economic is how can we better make that connection with Organic Valley. Again, I think there's certainly a agreement on both sides, and it's just a matter of how can you to better utilize the resources. Also, maintain regular contact with existing business owners to monitor their needs and discuss business issues, concerns, and future businesses or village projects. Again, it comes down to that connection between their existing business district, the village board. How can they just better interact? I think there's a lot of informal interaction. What we're looking at is, at least yearly, that the two actually sit down and have a good dialogue about businesses. What are we doing? What are we looking at doing in the future? And well, as the community of Lafarge, this plan, okay, this is what we're looking at doing. How can this assist you, or what impacts does it have on you? And we're certainly looking at ways to again strengthen that relationship. Another key economic development of action is identify key tourism, business, and/or recreation assets to integrate into a community brand. When you look around Lafarge, it's great. You got the business district, you have Organic Valley, you have the reserve, you have obviously already a beautiful park, you have the Kickapoo River. How do you integrate that into a brand? Similar to Gays Mills is fortunate. When you say Gays Mills, people think of apples. It's right now when people say Lafarge, I don't think we're, to my mind anyways, the way I'm thinking, I'm not sure if I'm thinking Kickapoo River, I'm thinking Organic Valley. There's different things. So if we could, somehow integrate this into a community brand and market that, and then that all comes down to obviously, making again yet another destination in people's minds. Another thing that was identified is system matching new and expanding businesses to existing vacant storefronts, buildings, or properties. Again, there's in a lot of cases, and there are some vacant storefronts, and some of them, a lot of times, I think aren't even advertised. They're just vacant or underutilized, and things that's brought out. How can we somehow make that connection? Because a lot of cases, it seems that there's people that need space, and then there's these spaces, but there just isn't that way to make that connection. And that again, through communication, is one of the things we'll be certainly looking at. So those are some of the key points of the plan itself. And I'm going to talk about how do you accomplish it? What is needed? That's sort of the step where we're at in Lafarge right now. Sort of that next step. How do we begin to accomplish it? In every community I work with, in the plans I prepared, there's really three key things. In Lafarge, I think there's a fourth one. But three key things that are important. First of all, you need in Lafarge's case, you need, and in any municipality, village board and community support. I prepared a lot of plans over the years I've been doing this that once they've been adopted, they go nowhere. They sit on the shelf, nobody looks at them. And a lot of times those are plans that are prepared when people think, well, this is something we have to do, this is required to do, so we're going to say, do it, get out of the way, and forget about it. The thing about Lafarge and also Gays Mills is when they made that decision, they realized they had the plan. And there was a commitment to it. And that the village was aware that in order to move forward, in order to be successful, we have to take this step. It's not something that somebody's making us do. And that is key in any community that I've ever worked in, is if I'm able and ability to see that, I just know there's a better chance of that being implemented. We have that, I believe, in Lafarge. The second key thing is funding. And we're fortunate in Lafarge, being in the Kickapoo Valley, and we have access to the Newsom Fund. As I said, that funded the planning process, and we were just recently awarded additional funding for this year to begin implementation through that grant. And also, actually I just got a call this morning. I'll be meeting in Vernon County with the Finance Committee next Wednesday with regard to requesting funding. The county, through the Ho-Chunk funds, I received as the village requested funding to assist with implementation of some of the things we've talked about here tonight. And if you have that funding, that again makes things happen. Third thing that's very key is a person or committee to take the leadership role. And whether it's an individual or whether it's a committee or an individual champion in the community, somebody has to be there that takes this thing to heart and moves ahead with it. You look at communities that have been successful, you look at Wyatt Gaze Mills, and what you'll hear about is being successful. One of the key reasons is they have that person that's their job to do that, to make those plans happen and come forth. And you'll hear about that, but that is the key. That is key to have. If a community has those three things going for it, there's great opportunity for success. And so far, indications of Lafarge, we certainly have the first two, and I think the commission is certainly ready to go. And time tells, but we are off to a good start. Also in Lafarge, I think as far as the economic development activities, there's really a challenge as far as economic development challenge, I think, in Lafarge. Is in the village of Lafarge, there currently isn't a village committee, organization, chamber of commerce, business association, or economic development corporation with the purpose of promoting or improving economic activity within the village. Really, you need that, in my view, you need some sort of baseline infrastructure in place in order for, if your economic development activities really take place. You need the buy-in from the community, from the businesses. You need something to back that. In order for economic development initiatives, I think, to take hold in Lafarge, that is something that's going to have to develop. And one of the first things we have identified, and we'll be doing that this fall, is conducting a meeting, wanting the Plan Commission Village Board to meet with the business owners and have them come to a meeting and say, okay, this is the plan that was prepared. How involved do you want to be? And what we hear from there will certainly determine the success as we move forward within the village. The next steps. Projects to begin implementation in 2013 is we're looking to connect that village trail system to the Kickapoo Valley Reserve. Again, that is this link. We're also focusing on a walkway, handicap accessible fishing area, dredging that pond and the educational forest to again take some of that floodplain property that currently has been acquired as underutilized, to utilize and make it a community asset. The third thing is develop a Main streetscape concept, a vision for Main Street. And through like I said, we've received Newsom funding to assist with this in the upcoming year. As far as the Main streetscape concept, we are going to currently going to be working with either UW-Madison landscape architecture student or students or potentially class that will take a look at that Main Street, provide the village with some elevations or some visions of what that Main Street could look like. And then the village, can take a look at, hey, this is something that down the road in the future that might be nice and might be something we'd be interested in. From that aspect of it, something's going to happen overnight. But if you have that vision, you have that goal that when the roadway is going to be reconstructed and they come through, and the Department of Transportation, they talk about things you like. Well, hey, we've had this, and we've looked at it. This has sort of been our vision, and began to incorporate that. So that is where the plan is as we move ahead. And in 2013, through the Newsom funding, there was some funding put in there for the Regional Planning Commission, probably myself, again, to continue to facilitate the process and sort of, in the interim, at least be hopefully one of those people that helps to spur this on within Lafarge and keep things moving ahead. With that, the copy of the plan can be viewed online or downloaded at our Plan Commission website. And with that, certainly any questions you have. That's fine. I can turn over to Julie. Thank you.
I don't know how to operate this thing, so you're gonna have to show me.
Page down goes forward. Up goes up back.
That's up, that's down, okay. Go
Yeah,
down,
but you go
down is forward, okay. Thank you too for all your work in Gates Mills. My name is Julia Henley. I'm on my finishing up my third year in Gaze Mills, and which is hard to believe because it's been just an amazing, busy time. I came on board after the work of that one person, Rich Stevenson right over here, who really spearheaded and motivated the Long Range Planning Committee to get something happening, to not just give up, to make sensible decisions going forward. And I'm just thrilled that I was able to participate in this project. I can't even see it on here very well, but we're right here in the heart of the Driftless region. And that's really important. That's really important for our collective branding through the Kickapoo Valley. It's very important because we're special, and that's going to help with larger regional branding going forward. What I look at this is that we were lucky enough to have a disaster, which then allowed us to get some funding to help rebuild an economic engine or an economic vehicle. And some of the things we got from some agencies were we got a couple wheels, and somebody else we got a motor or something, or an engine. And but the parts of it, the things that put it together, the local talent and the resources, we need to assemble that into something that can operate. And then when we get it assembled, we got to figure out how to keep it going. We got to keep that fuel in there, and that fuel really is marketing. Again, Driftless, Western Upland area. This is Gaze Mills aerial photo. I did get nauseated after doing this one day after I went out. This is the historic floodplain right through here, and then as you go around the corner and up, you're in the Upland District, and this is our river coming through. This is a plan. I think it was done by Verbecker and Associates. Again, showing the floodplain, which we are now calling the Historic River District, and redeveloping it to be able to connect to the new sites, and then up to our existing business park, which is also being developed, and the river running through it. This is our brand. This is all the cool things that people love about this area. And this is a huge opportunity. We've got the apples, of course. We're known for the apples. Our orchards are doing great this year. Within even a couple states area, we're doing great in Gaze Mills that way. But there's more stuff going on, and there's more stuff that needs to be going on, and there's more stuff that needs to be marketed, not just in Gaze Mills, but up and down the valley. There's challenges, but there's also opportunity here. Right from this angle, this was last spring, we're looking out over the slough. Just beyond it is the river, and this is from the back deck of the new village offices, library, and Kickapoo Culinary Center. The challenges are that this was major public funding in a climate of massive change, federally, locally, and also statewide. Stressed population. You've been through a disaster. It's tough to make decisions. Money, money, money. We got to justify the project. We've got to manage it wisely. We've got to stay the course. It's not all about economic development, but it's economic development within the context of protection of the environment, the people, and kind of a sustainable model. This isn't about growing to the extent that you can't sustain it. This is about stabilized growth, people that want to come in and participate into the community. The politics of recovery were tough, I think. The personal level of perspective, when people are stressed, there's facts versus stories, there's rumor, there's building trust through communication. It's getting people that didn't typically work together to decide to work together, because ultimately we're all in this together. And I think that was a really good thing that came out of this project with Gaze Mills. There's a lot of fears. There's fear of financial ruin either way. We're spending too much money. I don't have enough money to get by. There's fear of abandonment without completion of the project. What's going to happen after 5 years? Is anybody else going to be able to do this? There's a fear of losing this identity of the small town village. How do we keep that identity, but how do we go forward? And my biggest fear is there's too much fear, because that's really what incapacitates people. It's that deer in the headlights in the road. Coming to terms with decline and disaster. The reality is it didn't happen when the board decided that we're going to relocate voluntarily to a new section of town. Decline and disaster has been very, very calmly happening over the last 3-4 decades in rural communities all across America. We just had this big disaster to help kind of shake us up a little bit and kind of deal with a lot of the issues that were always going on. Assistance versus entitlement. There's that constant, is this right? Should we be spending this money? And the way I looked at it, the way I've been looking at it, it's great gifts, great responsibility. We need to leverage this money, and we've got to make it positive for the long term. I think challenges of change are one of the biggest psychological issues that come about when a community decides to get together and do something big. And there's always the group that is fairly adaptable to change. So half of them, I'd say, are fairly accepting about it, and the other half are kind of actively will embrace change. They collide very much with people that actively fight change. And the other ones, the fear of change, they just don't want to participate in it because it's too upsetting. This acceptance and non-participation group, which is a large part of the population, I think through communication and understanding the plan, can come together and can learn and grow from this. And that's the heart and soul that we need to be talking to. There's rules. Grant requirements are rules. There's village priorities. There's ethical as well as practical focus about how we spend that money, how we make it work. There's a plan. What can give us the most bang for the buck? How can we leverage that money to do something big? What plan can also lay the foundation for other development? And that is very, very important. And then execute it. What financial package can maximize the dollars received? And what financial structure can help with future needs? All very, very important. Again, keep our thoughts, agriculture, recreation, a beautiful place to live. This is a new age, and it's a different time for rural America. The reset, the national real estate reset, failure, crash, whatever you want to call it, 2008, kind of slowed everybody down. Kind of made it was an equalizer, if you will. And I think it's a huge opportunity for rural America, our small communities, the southwest Wisconsin, the Kickapoo Valley, Gays Mills, Lafarge. And we've dealt with rural flight, we've dealt with farming challenges and changes, we've dealt with big box retailing that have destroyed many, many main streets, and we've dealt with questionable return on investment from some existing businesses that have needed some help and maybe some motivation and new ways of looking at things and new ways of crafting their business plan. There's opportunity. The disaster funds provided an opportunity. There's a new awareness of value in people's lives of what's important. I think that everybody has experienced in the last few years that I think is psychologically very important and very important for our rural communities. And rural communities are now at a place where we're not out in the boondocks, we're connected. So not only do we have a great lifestyle, we're connected with technology and a low cost of living too. So going forward, the commitment to building sustainably is possible. And we're really committed to that in Gays Mills. Building construction, we tried our best to do the best structures we could do for the money. We've used SIPS panels, we've used ICF construction, which is oh my gosh, I'm forgetting what it is. Concrete forms. Very, very, it's like a castle. It retains the heat, retains the cool, and it's very low operational cost. We care about not wasting energy. We want to have a low footprint on the world, and that's what we're trying to do over in Gays Mills. And then budget, we had to deliver the project on budget within the rules of each grant. Going forward, getting beyond disaster, we have to have faith in the future of the location that we live in, and we have to really engage with our communities. Communications are big, communications outreach from Gays Mills and to all the people that don't live in Gays Mills anymore but care about Gays Mills, people that don't live in the Kickapoo Valley anymore but care about the Kickapoo Valley. There's lots of options and lots of strategies that we're trying to pursue to be able to get the word out there. Developing real infrastructure to make it happen, yes, it's facilities, but it's also our workforce development. It's also our amenities, our recreational amenities. As Peter pointed out, very, very important for economic development. It's not just about bringing that tourist in, it's about honoring the people that actually already work within the community and some of our larger employers. Very, very important to keep them and do what we can to make living in these areas very, very attractive. So as new hires come along, that's where they want to be. Collaboration, it's a public-private organizations and regional effort. It is not just your small community. And embracing technology to communicate cost-effectively is really important. The cycle of recovery started out with assistance through grants, emergency assistance, huge initially, funding and planning. That led to planning, which lays the groundwork for residents and volunteers and future grantors to say, hey, you're serious, we understand this, we want to go forward. Then you can take some action, you can leverage your grant funding, what you get, and plan to secure the next stages as you go forward. Infrastructure, you have to start out with private investment in business, community investment in amenities. Very, very important right now in the stage we're at in Gays Mills. And then that will restart their economic engine. The Newsom Grant, a little plug for the Newsom Foundation, that helped us plan, in conjunction with a student from the university, some of the historic floodplain uses going forward, how we can honor the past and yet deal with the fact that many of these buildings are going down. Comprehensive plan for the community, really important. We just got a grant from the Department of Natural Resources to begin work on our section of the trail, which ultimately I believe in subsequent applications will eventually connect Gays Mills to Lafarge. So everybody's working on their section, but that's the Kickapoo Trail, and that's very, very important. That wouldn't have happened, or at least we wouldn't have scored as high if we wouldn't have had the comprehensive plan. So it was very good to be able to rely back on that. Website and marketing development, it improves our marketing position, it gets the word out, very, very important, and cost effective. It also provided expenses for the community input for the development of the plans, and also the development of our logo. Very important. Collaboration and regional focus. KB Ready was instrumental for me in my education going forward in Gays Mills and how this community related to the rest of the communities. Driftless, Wisconsin is a newly organized effort, collaboration between Vernon and Crawford County. Huge, this is huge. Prosperity Southwest is another economic development group. For the longest time, Crawford has been kind of ignored and not really part of any kind of groups, and lately we're overlapping with a couple, which is exciting. We can work with who we need to work with going forward. Of course, Mississippi River Regional Planning, kudos, great work. We've got now a County Economic Development Director, which we just got recently, and we have the Gays Mills Economic Development Association, which is taking on a number of projects for the community, showing leadership, making things happen. Phasing in recovery from 2009 to 2011, this is the important part. We lost over 40 homes. It's been tough on businesses, but the work that has happened just with the townhomes of 17 units and the merger of the marketplace to keep a grocery store local and also to keep a gas station in the area, it was a net gain over pre-flood levels and tax base of over $2 million. That was done with a combination of public funds, private funds, and totally new investment. Recovery and facilities, there's a new central business district and neighborhood, public safety, EMS, public works, the village hall, community building, library, and economic development, the mercantile, which houses currently 6 different businesses, most of them relocating, 2 of them new, and I expect to be filling that up hopefully by the end of the year, and the incubator kitchen, which is known as the Kickapoo Culinary Center. And what that does for us is that gives us an opportunity to help develop new business going forward that will benefit the region. In progress, near future investment, the bistro coming online hopefully the fall of this year, which is very, very exciting. The Arts Collective of the Driftless, we're reaching out to artists at least in a 90-mile radius, and what's important about that is so often our artists are underappreciated, and what we want to be able to do is have them actually make a profit and do well. So they're all coming together. They're going to be in the mercantile, and they should be open towards the end of September. Obviously, business investment, Kickapoo Culinary Center will generate business, and the Driftless Inn, which I'm hoping will be coming soon. That is not the final name, that's just how I'm referring to it. So if there's a Driftless Inn right now, we won't be using that name. Amenities investment right now, new events. The Brave Ride in the fall has been re-energized. That's going to be September 15th. We're going to have the Brave Challenge in the spring. We're hoping to do collaborative marketing with the Reserve on their fall triathlon. And so that kind of collaborative thinking between our communities up and down the river is going to be very, very important. And then we get that message outward, that comes back in. The Gardens of Gays Mills, what are we going to do with our historic floodplain? We want to make it beautiful, we want to make it attractive, we want to make it useful for these events. Kickapoo Bottoms was purchased 2 years ago, a beautiful recreational area through the Mississippi Valley Conservancy. The Stump Dodger Trail will begin its construction, hopefully, yet this fall, and be completed, at least the section in Gays Mills, next year. The Log Cabin Historic Park is being revitalized and cared for, and river access is very, very important for us as we go forward, and urban forestry efforts. Public-private partnership, disaster recovery in conjunction with long-term sustainability. Yes, we've worked with FEMA and HUD and CDBG and DNR. And business assistance in general is, on average, less than 30% of the total project. And then the balance is stretched with private investment and loans. And that's what it looked like on our floody day. 2011, 2012, getting started in the Mercantile. We've got the hair salon, the barbershop, the local newspaper, the bistro, and adjacent inn. We've got the Arts Collective Gallery, dance exercise studio. Ice cream is going to be incorporated with the bistro, and archery was one thought early on, but I have another location for that right now. Marketplace, an unlikely merger, the gas station, the market, and the Cenex. And this plan, funded with 2010 disaster recovery, DNR brownfield, DNR floodplain mitigation, local bank loans, private funds, and yes, the Newsom Foundation. This is the new section. I would call this the upland section. Back towards the back of the slide, off to the right, is new residential lots, 38 of them. In the central area, we have the new Mercantile, and we're filling it up. This was an aerial photo from last summer. This is a quick sketch of what the Mercantile looks like. And the idea here is to concentrate on everyone benefiting while underscoring the brand. Agricultural, develop in existing businesses. Manufacturing, we got to concentrate on our existing manufacturing, we got to develop them. Retail, continue to develop and enhance. Services, develop and enhance. Healthcare, we want to coordinate that, and we need a clinic locally. Hospitality, entertainment, we need to develop it and create new amenities. Must-haves, we've got to have convenient services, we got to have local jobs. We need a healthy local economy and a tax base that is better than what it's been, because we want to keep taxes down, because that's part of the appeal of being out in a rural community. And we need to have things to do and sharing the culture. That attracts tourists, but it also keeps residents. The business project delivery process, how it worked is we accelerate the development process, job creation, business growth, equal sustainability. So the concept is create win-win projects. Everybody wins. That's what we want to do. We got to work through the financials. We got to develop the location costs, update those financials to make sure they still work, find that funding for grants, private equity loans, and get the village on board, and get the village board on board. We're kayaking. Recovery seeds new projects. Development priorities going forward. Song's Mushroom Farm needs to get out of the floodplain, but they also are an amazing farm that could be developed, all kinds of value-added products. So I'm very, very excited about them. The bistro relocation, the inn new investment, the funeral home's going to start construction soon. Got to get that Mercantile filled and develop those amenities. With this, another 2,900,000 net above the other number that I gave you earlier. That's very, very important for this community. And all this attracts new investment. New culinary tourism opportunities, new educational tourism opportunities, expansion of tourism services, regional collaborative strategies. Is a win-win for everybody. The Gays Mills project, I believe, it will have a ripple effect. And I believe the Lafarge project will have a ripple effect very positively for our communities. This is the view from the back side of the village offices looking off to the Mercantile, to the center, and to the new grocery store off to the left here. And those are the townhomes. We built 17 so far.
Are they filled?
They are filled, and there's a waiting list. That is a problem. We can't get them up fast enough. The village districts, what's in a name? I don't call it the floodplain. I call it the historic river district. It sounds much more appealing, and I think that makes me want to visit it. So I'm going to do everything I can to make it appealing for anybody else that wants to visit it. The upland district, it contains the mercantile, village services, housing, grocery, gas station. BAPI, our major employer of manufacturing, a worldwide company that we want to support, the EMS, public works, and as soon as possible, we want to get a clinic that works in the area for us. Exactly what that clinic is, I don't know quite yet. We want it to work with other regional healthcare providers, but there is a gap of having services in the area. Age-in-place housing, get that mushroom farm moved, and workforce and retirement housing. The fairgrounds and Kickapoo Bottoms, how can we develop those? How can we make this all kind of coordinate together? And then, of course, the Orchard District. We got to make it all kind of work together. Trail sidewalks and a bus route. Bus route, kudos. There's going to be a bus route that's going to start in October, coming from La Crosse through Viroqua, down through Gates Mills, Prairie du Chien, and back around. And I'd like everybody to know about that bus route. So I've asked Peter to look into finding ways we can market that bus with nice graphics on it to get people that are in La Crosse to come back down into this area and vice versa. Sidewalks connected from the floodplain to the new business areas are a priority. Establishing a visitor-friendly way to access all areas without a car eventually is a priority. And then, of course, the bus route. Build local capacity, huge. Collaborate with existing organizations on projects, on funding, on motivating volunteers and communications. There was a hugely motivated recovery team, volunteer team starting out, and I am really pleased to report there's now a motivated volunteer group that really wants to see beautiful things happen in the area, and getting all those people to work together again on some new positive projects is very, very exciting. Develop Local Economic Development Association. They've taken on special projects, and private leadership is working with local government. Huge. Develop that volunteer base. This is Kay Smiley. She is a very, very active volunteer. She has a big heart for the historic floodplain, but she's also working to help connect the whole community too, as a volunteer. Gaze Mills Dev is doing Log Cabin Park, Stump Dodger Trail, Urban Forestry, River Access. Sponsoring the Kickapoo Culinary Center is a leadership group, and we're working on events, the Arts Collector, and Jobs Acceleration. Communications, it's everywhere, local, regional, state. It's shameless self-promotion whenever we can get it. Get the word out. Regional brand and collaboration, and starting to work with technology. I'm not a huge Facebook fan, but social media, we have to deal with it, and we have to figure out a way to have it work for us. And luckily, we've had a very talented and motivated volunteer in Mickey Rosh that has loved this and has really run with it. Website links, huge, a regular newsletter, and coming soon, a blog. Completed projects in the business and housing strengthens other requests for capital. We have done some good things, and each time we do something good, we have another reason to have somebody trust us with the money to make it work. It provides that ripple effect and establishes credibility for collaborative efforts. Destination Driftless, making the case for the long term. I don't want people thinking about Gaze Mills anymore as a disaster. We're not a disaster. We're not in the valley. We're not an abandoned dam project anymore, and we're not dying rural America. We are tech savvy. We have healthy lifestyles. It's a new economy. It's local, it's personal, it's small business. There's a world impact in agriculture coming out of this valley, world impact in technology coming out of this valley, and a world impact in new ruralism, a new way to live. And it's the taste of the region, which is very, very unique. That's our taste right there. I want to go eat a salad. Again, lots of stuff going on. That's our Driftless area. This is our heart, right through here. The next steps, more regional collaboration across borders, economically, tourism, remote educational plans, how cool is that? New projects, Driftless Heritage Center in Gaze Mills, brand recognition for the region, and job acceleration coming out of the Kickapoo Culinary Center. All the cool stuff. That's a lovely old drawing of Gaze Mills looking down from the orchards. And I think that's it. Population of Gays Mills is right around 500 people. Lafarge? 700? Yeah. Is there any other questions for me? Go ahead.
Well, I know Soldiers Grove, you know, what, 40 years ago? moved
Yeah.
to Town site?
Yeah.
At that time, should Gays Mills have thought about doing it? They just couldn't get together? Or, I mean, did they have?
I believe there were projects, weren't there, Rich? There was proposals?
They tried, but they voted it down by 6 votes.
Oh,
So it was on the agenda and they voted and it was turned down at the very same time that Soldiers Grove agreed to move. These mills said, we're gonna stay. 6 votes, so it was close.
Anybody else?
This time they didn't get a vote.
They did.
7 votes for this time.
Just in the idea of meshing the two, your Economic Development Association, is that business owners?
Yes. Well, no, it's not like a chamber or anything like that. This is a group, a small board essentially that's been created. They've been in existence now 10 years, Rich, would you say? And these are the community business people that have kind of gotten together and have believed in the project and all along have kind of furthered along economic development as they could. We're just at this point right now where there's a whole lot of activity, things that need to get done, and they're stepping up. They're stepping up to help guide these projects and provide the organizational strength behind it.
And then the river access?
River access is that I had a wonderful canoe trip along the Kickapoo recently, but our put-ins and takeouts are a little dicey, so we need to get those improved, so it's not so
But it
hard.
is open?
Yes, it is open. It's open. And it should be fully open, I believe, from Reedstown.
Reached on the bridge.
Well, through,
There's Bell Center.
yes, all the way through Bell Center, it will be clear. But it's a beautiful ride. It's not like up here, it's different, but it is really nice. It's quite nice. Anybody else? Thank you.
Thanks for coming again. Our next Driftless Dialogue will be on September 26th, and Paul Bader from the Kickapoo Woods Cooperative will be here to talk about the history of the cooperative and their education outreach efforts that they've done over the years. So September 26th. Thank you.